And welcome to another edition of the Mojobreak Dugout Session. Cody alongside Doug, and we are halfway home on this Major League Baseball season, a 60-game sprint to the finish. There's going to be 16 teams that are going to be fighting for that World Series title at the end of it. We're going to talk about who we think those teams might be, some of the surprising teams, some of the disappointing teams, who's going to be on the come-up in the second half of the season. Plus, we'll be talking about some of those first half heroes for Major League Baseball, the MVP candidates, the Cy Young candidates. Who are the guys who are going to take home the hardware when it's all said and done? But first off, we got to start, of course, with our bread and butter. That would be the trading card business. And Bowman has got an exciting new line that, Doug, can you tell us more about what's coming up this week for collectors?
Yeah, absolutely. It's debuting on Wednesday, and it's 2020 Bowman Transcendent. Transcendent's been a brand that screams high-end. It's got crazy cut autos. It's got a guaranteed superfractor every box, plus multiple one-of-ones. And this year's Bowman is 85 cards. So there's a 50-card set, which should do better than most Transcendents because it's going to be prospect-based. So these guys, you know, the Adley Rushmans, the Riley Greens, if they start performing, these base cards might do pretty well. Every case is going to have a one-of-one, either Jordan or Vlad Guerrero Jr. There also is an invitation for a Bowman Transcendent party that's in each case. There's only 100 cases made. They've used some of iconic Bowman designs for the one-of-ones. So you can check it out. We're doing a break at Mojobreak.com on Wednesday. Get your spots. It's actually $229 a spot, and you're guaranteed a card. So cases are retailing at like $21,000. So to be able to get into a break and guarantee yourself one of these awesome cards, you go ahead into Mojobreak.com and grab a spot. Like I said, there's only 100 cases left, so it's 100 cases made total. So they go quick amongst all the breaking communities. So definitely join in on our break. It's the cheapest way to do it with guaranteeing that everybody gets something.
It sounds like it's an awesome set. It's awesome names you heard. I'm sure that maybe Topps and Bowman would have liked that, Jordan Alvarez wasn't hurt right now. Vlad Guerrero maybe got off to a better start, but a lot of really exciting names. And you know what? If 20K still feels like a steep price, I'm going to bet that pales in comparison to the Mike Trout cards that, if you didn't hear over the weekend, that is the big story in the trading card biz, in the hobby right now. I'm coming from this from an outsider's perspective here, Doug, where, I was working in sports radio, and during the time of no sports during the pandemic, the thing that kept coming up every single week, we're looking for things to talk about. We're looking for stories. And it's like, man, trading cards are going through the roof right now. There's this Mike Trout card just sold for well over $1 million. This LeBron James card just broke that record. And now, as you can see, the Mike Trout signed rookie card goes for $3.9 million at auction. Breaks the all-time record. It breaks the record, I believe, the Honus Wagner card, the Holy Grail of baseball cards, breaks that record. Obviously, it obliterates the modern card record. Just crazy stuff. You see it right there. That's first Bowman, Chrome, Superfractor, Auto of Mike Trout that sold for a pretty penny. And the guy who did it would be a guy who is either maybe a little infamous, notorious. I don't know maybe what the word would be for Vegas Dave, who... Look, I'll just say this. Look, good for you. You made a big profit on the card, but hey, man, don't need to be going around and disparaging the good working folks. I think he said something to the effect of like, I did no manual labor and I just flipped this for $3.6 million. Meanwhile, you're at a job working 40 hours a week and you hate your boss. Like, hey, all right, buddy. No need to throw us, the regular folk, under the bus. Come on, man.
Right. I mean, the average consumer is not going to be able to afford the $400,000 price tag that he bought that card to begin with 2 years ago. Props to him. Obviously, his brand is sports betting. So he uses his, I don't know if it's a facade he's putting on, but obviously it's a way of getting people to go to his betting site and getting betting advice, buying betting advice. And he's had some great bets that he will not let you forget about. But to put this in perspective, this card came out in 2009. I wasn't even really into the hobby around there, but I went to spring training in 2009, right when this came out. So Bowman Draft is the set that it was in. And those typically come out at the end of the year. So then when you head into the spring training, actually it was spring training in 2010, I went to a local card shop in Arizona and I bought one of these boxes for $70. So
Wow.
it just shows you how big of a lottery ticket this thing came to be, because I could have gotten lucky and pulled it, and whoever obviously did got lucky and pulled it. And 11 years later, we're talking about a crazy almost $4 million card. So that came out of a box that was literally under $100. Now you can't touch those boxes for under like 10 grand now for one single box. And obviously the Superfractor's been pulled, but there's still a lot of Trout autos out there in those boxes possibly. And what's crazy to me, and I know he's the best player in baseball and his stats and his WAR and all this stuff. Got to remember he's almost in the last place team this year.
Right.
So that's what's like befuddling to me, why it broke these modern records. And it really does speak to the way this industry is going. This moment may really, 10 years from now, say this was the epitome of our COVID/collecting that's going on, is this sale, which is crazy. I mean, we all knew when it went up, we were thinking it was going to be like 1.5 million, barely cracking a million. For the fact that it almost got to 4 million is crazy. I do want to see if it got paid. I do want to place a face to the card to see who actually bought it. And hopefully that works out as an investment. Maybe that person just really, really likes Trout. They bought the best card. But, love him or hate him, he just made the biggest flip of all time. I don't know if that will be topped. Granted, like we said, the average folk, nobody that I know will shell out $400K on a card and then, be able to turn this profit. You got to have the money to buy it anyway. But, there's stories like this going on in our hobby, and we're all trying to get the next guy. And this kind of vilifies the dream. If you are a flipper or if you are a collector, to be able to get something that's going to basically clock this kind of value and be talked about on ESPN and throughout all the celebrities. I mean, even Dave Portnoy from Barstool was tweeting about it. I mean, it was a good moment for our hobby, good or bad.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is it's this hobby has, just like everything, if once you go mainstream, it's for better or worse, for people who've been in it for years. It's like, where were you when these things were happening? But I think certainly over the last few months, it's definitely made that jump to the mainstream where this is a big story. I mean, go ahead and Google Mike Trout today. We'll show it a little bit, but the top thing you're seeing is the fact that this card sold for a crazy amount of money.
Yep.
And I guess, and you alluded to it, where does this stop? Is this going to be, are we at the point where it doesn't get anything beyond this? But I feel like every time we say, there's no way it gets crazier than this. I mean, I think with the LeBron James card, it felt like, no way. This is it.
Yeah.
This is the peak. We've reached the mountaintop. It's not going to get any bigger than this. And then this happens, and it's not that it just tops it. It almost more than doubles what the LeBron James card went for just a month ago. I'm not sure where it goes from here. Mike Trout obviously is a once-in-a-lifetime talent. If he God forbid he has to retire tomorrow, he's still a Hall of Famer, first ballot. But you mentioned it, is if he doesn't win a World Series, or if somehow the career sort of tails off, like he will always be seen as this all-time great player, but he may not be the all-time great player. And so suddenly this $4 million investment 10 years later is not looking so hot. So I just wonder where it ends. Is there going to be another sort of player who is going to command this type of price, this type of attention? Are we just going to see another LeBron James one of one card go for maybe $5 million now? I mean, I don't even know where the ceiling is at this point.
And we want to know if there's somebody that could break this record. Let's fast forward 15 years from now. Is there somebody currently in the league that Superfractor could possibly top Mike Trout? Obviously, there's a lot of Tatis fans right now, and his cards are going up. Acuna's had hype over the last few years. Is there somebody that can dethrone this sale 10 years from now or 15 years from now? Now, I know we're going to have inflation, and that happens, but we're going to have somebody that's better than Trout. Is that possible in the next 15 years? We want to hear in the comment below.
I don't think there's going to be. Trout is such a generational talent. I mean, every time they put up some new stat, it's like, all right, and if you subscribe to the stat wins above replacement, or if you don't, but the fact is every day you see like, all right, now Trout's passing another Hall of Famer on that list, and he passes Mickey Mantle on that list. You go, oh my God, like this just isn't normal. This doesn't happen every 10 years. It happens maybe every 50 years or so.
Right.
So I'm not sure if it happens, but I don't know if it's weird because he's clearly a once in a lifetime talent. We may never see another Mike Trout, and yet I'm not sure if a $4 million investment in his card is that sound an investment. I think there might be better investments. You mentioned Tatis and guys like that who I think are going to be Hall of Fame type talents who, and if they don't, you could maybe flip it for a big price now, and then down the road if they don't pan out, at least you got it early. So
yeah, and I think the thing for me too is that the fact that are the Angels ever going to build a good enough team around Trout to get him at least one World Series ring? And 2 or 3 years ago, I'd say they're on the right path. But after seeing what's going on with the Angels this year, how well he's performing, they're not winning games. I don't know if that organization will turn around in enough time to get this guy a ring. And then if you have this card, you're like, well, I mean, he didn't win a ring. I mean, I have Barry Bonds cards, and obviously, there's the steroid talk. But the other thing is that Barry never won a World Series championship. So do you guys think that Trout will win a World Series championship? I mean, how many more years do we think Trout has? Solidly in his prime, 5-6 more years?
Yeah, I'd say at least 5 or 6. And, I think baseball, too, is one of the few sports where not winning a World Series is not going to really hurt your value or your reputation as much. Just look at Ken Griffey Jr. cards. Yep. Ken Griffey Jr. cards, even with all the injuries he had throughout his career, those are still really highly coveted. Are really valuable. Those rookie cards are some of the most coveted in the game. So I think that it's something that would clearly help the price go up. But if he doesn't, and he keeps performing at the pace he is right now, which is a historic pace, I think it'll be fine. But again, a $4 million investment, it's just a really crazy number to even wrap your head around. And Doug, we did a little bit of price comparison here with that $4 million number. What does that actually get you? And you looked this up, a mansion that Vegas Dave would maybe be able to now buy with that nice investment on this card, a $3.8 million mansion in Vegas.
Yeah, I mean, it's 9,000 square feet, 6 bedrooms. You can see the pool. I mean, crazy. I mean, it's just, that's you bring your friends over, and you show them that you bought this house. I think that's going to drop a few more jaws than a Mike Trout Superfractor.
Look at that pool. Are you kidding me?
Ridiculous. I know it gets really hot in Vegas, so that pool's probably going to be used quite a bit, but it's crazy to me, who doesn't own a house currently, to see somebody spend that kind of money on one card. Yeah. So that's why I'm really interested in seeing who bought this. Was it a face of a company? Was it a retired baseball player? Was it, I know the owner of the Diamondbacks buys cards. Was he involved in this? So, and you know what? Sometimes when somebody buys something like this, they like to remain anonymous. We may never know, because, it's a security issue. A lot of guys that win lottery don't want to, people that win lottery don't want to have their face. They just don't want people to hit them up for money or to know that they have something like this in their possession. So, but it would be really interesting to see who purchased this card.
Yeah, very interesting to see. I saw that Joe Madden, now currently the manager of the Angels, was told at the post-game press conference the other day that this card sold for this much money. And I think his quote was, "How much did the Mona Lisa go for? About the same price, right?" So that really puts things in perspective.
Really?
So let's also put a little more in perspective. I just looked up, okay, let's say you want to buy the Tesla Model X. We see a lot of those rolling around here in the Bay Area. There's a lot of money floating around the Bay Area, and that's a pretty expensive car. It runs you about about $80,000. So I was wondering, how many Tesla Model X cars could you buy for the price of a first Bowman Superfractor Auto Mike Trout card? How about 49 if you got room in your garage for the Tesla Model X? And who doesn't need a trip right now? I think we all need a vacation with everything going on. So how about a nice trip to Hawaii? That's you got to save up for months for that. And if for the same exact price, a trip for one to Hawaii, you could take 2,079 trips for one to Hawaii for the same price.
And just think about the camaraderie you would have with those. Like, say you bought 49 Teslas, which is stupid, it will never happen, but you could keep 10, give to 39 of them to your closest friends and relatives, And I think anybody would do anything for you at that point. I know they say money can't buy happiness, but if you bought somebody a Tesla,
oh yeah,
I'm pretty sure they would show up to all your birthday parties, all your kids' birthday parties.
Exactly.
Any trip you had, anything. And or you could be just sitting with a one-on-one piece of cardboard and convince people that you spent $3.8 million on it. And how many of those people would actually believe that you spent $3.8 million on a baseball card? It'd be probably hard to convince a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you give me an all-expense-paid trip to Hawaii, I will basically be at your whim for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
I'm pretty much set. Well, let's move on to some on-the-field stuff here as we are now halfway through the Major League Baseball season, which, I should say most of the teams are about halfway
not all
through the
of them,
MLB
right?
season. We've got, of course, the Cardinals and the Marlins are still playing catch-up right now. The Mets took the weekend off. There was a bit of a scare with COVID. Apparently, everything's fine there. Everybody came back. I think maybe one player may have had a positive test, but nothing has spread. They're going to be back on the field tomorrow. That's fantastic news to hear with everything that's been going on. The last thing you wanted to hear was a third team have an outbreak right now. So most of baseball, though, about halfway through the MLB season, and we're starting to get a clearer picture of who are the contenders, who are the pretenders, who are the best players to watch. And I think it's a good time now at the halfway point to talk about who we might think is going to walk away with some hardware at the end of the year. And we're going to start off with the National League MVP. And if you're watching us, you can see some of the faces there. Fernando Tatis, who has been one of the stories in all of baseball, both good and bad, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Mike Yastrzemski, who's been a huge story, especially locally in the Bay Area, but he is among one of the best players in baseball and a great story now for 2 years running. Bryce Harper is among those guys as well, even though the Phillies are having a rough year. And Charlie Blackmon, Mookie Betts, a couple of other names that I think are names to watch here in the National League MVP race. For me, Doug, it's kind of the obvious answer. These guys are all having great seasons. There's even a few guys I didn't mention. Juan Soto, who got, of course, had that COVID positive test to begin the season, missed a lot of time, and has just been on fire ever since. But to me, Fernando Tatis is the story of the season when it comes to players in baseball this year, both for what happened against the Rangers, but really more than anything, he is become, I think, easily the most exciting player in all of baseball.
Yeah, he's lighting up the stat categories. I mean, I would say for me, it'd be between him and Mookie. I mean, Mookie has been coming on strong this last week. I believe he just hit 2 home runs yesterday. So, his stats are starting to catch up to Tatis. And I think it's really going to break down to who wins that division. I mean, I know the Dodgers are kind of in the lead, but I think it has to be Tatis. Just what he's done, the plays he's made, the flash, how many times his name has been in the headlines compared to everybody else. Unless he just goes on an epic cold streak, I think it's pretty much going to be him.
Yeah, and I think so much of the awards, too, it's not just your on-the-field play on, even though probably should be. It has gotten a little better, I think, over the last few years, but the story is important. Are you a captivating character? Are you someone who is an exciting character in baseball, someone that is going to lure more fans into the game? And I think Fernando Tatis is at the top of that list. He made a catch in Sunday's game. Did you happen to see that one?
Yeah, that where he ran almost all the way out in the left field.
Yeah, and of course he wears number 23. He literally is doing the Air Jordan look. Like, it was out of this world. And I know everybody in the sports world was talking about another young superstar, Luka Doncic, at the same time, but it was pretty impressive what Fernando Tatis was doing.
Yeah, I mean, you show the frame and you see the left fielder not even moving, and you're like, wait, what's good? Is this going to fall in? Then all of a sudden he just comes in the frame and just makes this catch, and you're so used to seeing his hitting highlights, so now you're seeing this, and you're like, what kind of range does this guy have, right? And it's like, and then he's stealing bases too. I believe he's leading the league in stolen bases.
The full package, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, what is he not doing? I mean, I think he's literally out there maybe in the off games, he's making dinner for everybody, and he's probably cooking to perfection. He literally can't do anything wrong at this moment in time. So I really can't sway my vote anywhere else for the National League MVP other than Fernando.
Yeah, you mentioned Mookie Betts, who is having a fantastic year. He's got 11 home runs, which is second in Major League Baseball. He's played excellent defense in right field. I think he's ranked by some statistics defensive runs above average. Is the best defensive right fielder in the game of baseball right now. So he's right up there at the top of the list. He's the best player on the best team in baseball. I think he has to be there. I'm just going to shout out Mike Yastrzemski. If you look at his Fangraphs WAR right now, he is right there with Fernando Tatis Jr. as the second best offensive player in Major League Baseball, which sounds like a crazy thing to say, but if you have been watching the Giants and day in, day out like a lot of us do around here, it's not that big of a surprise. He's been a really fantastic player to watch, really fun, and another guy who kind of just does a little bit of everything.
And you know what's actually interesting about those three names, specifically Mookie Betts, Tatis, and Yastrzemski, is those guys were all American League players at one point. So, I'm pretty sure those teams could have used those guys. I mean, Yastrzemski got to start with the Orioles. I know he really kind of schlubbed around the minors, didn't really show it with them, and now he is. And then you've got, Tatis that came up with the White Sox, and then Mookie Betts, who was on the Red Sox, and they declined to basically sign him because of the contract situation. And I'm sure Boston fans are really missing Mookie at this moment.
Oh, my gosh. Boston looks like they're in complete disarray right now.
Yeah.
I cannot remember. Maybe the last time a franchise went from the heights that the Red Sox were at to just the bottom of the barrel was the Marlins. Yeah. And you kind of get it with the Marlins. They're not a big name, big money franchise. So they kind of operate that way, like one and done. If we can get one in this maybe 1 or 2 year span, we'll consider it a win. The Red Sox, that's going to be the trade that I think they regret forever and ever and ever.
And they were probably hoping it was going to be a Pujols situation where they felt like they got the best years out of the guy.
No way.
But unlike the Tatis White Sox situation and the Yastrzemski Orioles situation, the Red Sox seen how good he played in the big. So, it's a situation where you kind of need to bite the bullet and give the guy the money that he deserves. And, maybe you have to lose somebody else. Maybe you have to lose 2 other players. But I'd rather go down with the best guy than to look as bad as they look with the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th best guys.
Exactly. And I just one other name to mention. I briefly mentioned him. Juan Soto, I think, is the guy to watch in the second half. If he were a qualified player right now, he just doesn't have enough at-bats because he missed so much at the beginning of the season, he would lead the National League in on-base percentage, he'd lead the National League in slugging percentage, and he would lead all of baseball with a 1.248 OPS if he was qualified right now. So he cannot be ignored. And again, what's he? 21, 22 years old?
And what does he have that Trout doesn't have?
He's got that ring already.
And how young he is, he already has the hardware, but... Yeah. Like we mentioned earlier, hardware doesn't seem to matter in the card industry because you look at Buster Posey's accomplishments and it doesn't. Joey Bart outsells Buster Posey without doing anything.
Right.
So, that may not necessarily matter, but if I may consider, and, we'll get into some Tatis prices here shortly, I may consider putting that in Soto, who's already proven himself in the postseason against a team that allegedly cheated and they still won.
Yeah.
That had the advantage on pitch counts and stuff like that, and the Nationals still found a way to win, and Soto had an epic series. So, maybe just because he hasn't been playing because of his COVID thing and Tatis has taken the spotlight away, I would look at some of these Soto cards and really consider it. If it's like you can get 2 Sotos to the price of 1 Tatis.
Oh, it's a no-brainer.
That might be what you're gonna do.
To me, that's an absolute no-brainer. They're about the same age. Soto's already got the experience under his belt. He's only going to get better. I think Juan Soto is a guy that 2 or 3 years down the road, we're going to be saying, this guy and probably Tatis, these are the 2 best players in all of baseball.
Yep.
He is really a phenomenal talent. Let's move to the American League, where it's an interesting list of names that are leading the MVP leaderboard right now in that league. You've got Nelson Cruz, who has been there and done that and just seems to be this ageless wonder.
Right.
The guy is still mashing. I think he's still up at the top of all of Major League Baseball in OPS and OPS Plus right now. You got Luke Voigt, another masher with the Yankees, who is having a really nice year and another nice find for that Yankee team where, we always talk about it. We've talked about it previously on the podcast, that like mini rebuild they did. And then about a year or two later, Luke Voit was kind of another piece of that rebuild. And he has just completely flourished, and he's totally found his swing at Yankee Stadium. That stadium is perfect for that type of player. But the two other guys that I think are the interesting candidates here, one is a rookie, a guy that we've talked about multiple times, Kyle Lewis up in Seattle. And Seattle's not going anywhere this year, but Kyle Lewis is second in the league in batting average. He, I believe, is leading the American League in on-base percentage, which that to me, as a rookie, is an incredibly impressive stat. He's got the power. He's got a little bit of everything. He made a phenomenal catch last week against the Dodgers. But the other guy that is definitely not going to get the publicity because he plays in Tampa Bay, but the Tampa Bay Rays are the number one team in the American League East, and one of the best teams in all of baseball. And a big reason why is their second baseman, Brandon Lau, who has been just up and down one of the most consistent players in the American League. I think he's leading all second basemen in almost every single offensive category. He is, by some metrics, the best offensive player in the American League right now. If you go by Fangraphs WAR, if you go by weighted runs created plus, he is right there at the top of the American League in those stats offensively, and he's a good defensive player as well. I think this is a much more up in the air debate here, but for my money, I will go with Brandon Lau because he doesn't have that big supporting cast like Nelson Cruz or that Luke Voit has, and Kyle Lewis just simply not on a good enough team right now.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree there. I would like to see what happens with Kyle Lewis by the end of the season. But Brandon Lau, young too. I mean, Nelson Cruz been around a little while. Voigt's been a journeyman and trying to find his place. But Brandon Lau, I think it's his second full season. I believe he was a rookie last year.
And an all-star last year too.
Yeah, right. So, and then, I mean, I looked at the standings, I think last week, and I couldn't believe that the Rays were at first. The Rays are just, especially as a West Coast fan, you just don't hear a lot about the Tampa Bay Rays. As a Bowman prospector, you hear about Wander Franco and stuff like that, but you don't really hear much about current Rays. And, this guy's cards are cheap, so it might be something to invest in, especially if they go deep into a run. But Kyle Lewis, I definitely think is here to stay, and I think the Mariners at some point in the next 4, maybe 5 years will be competing with that division, whether it be the Mariners or whether it be the A's, whether it be the Angels. Because I like Jared Kelenic a lot, who they got from the Mets in a deal. And I think that guy's a great hitter for average. I think if you couple that with a pretty strong farm system that the Mariners have, they should do good. They got Julio Rodriguez, who's one of the top 10 prospects. They've got a lot of pitching talent, so it's like George Kirby. So they are built. They might be like, the Astros were in, 13, 14. It may be the Mariners. So I actually got a chance to see Kyle Lewis play in San Jose, and one of the fastest guys I'd ever seen on the base paths in person as a prospect. So, and his cards are still relatively cheap compared to your Tatises and compared to your Sotos. So the collecting hobby hasn't completely jumped on him. And like Cody said, it might be the situation where they're just not competing right now as a team.
Yeah, they're not going to be there quite yet. You mentioned the Astros. I think the Mariners are totally following the same playbook that the Astros, now the White Sox, have been doing for the last decade or so, where they get 5 years of just absolutely terrible baseball. I know for Mariners fans, it's like 5 years. How about 45, 50 years of terrible baseball, other than, one bit of spectacular baseball in 2001. But
which they got bounced out the second round, I believe.
I know. I'll be honest. The Mariners have always held a place in my heart as like a second team. I loved Ken Griffey as a kid, and then the moment Griffey left, I became a huge Ichiro fan. So I don't share the same pain with Mariners fans, but they're always a team I am rooting for.
And Randy Johnson's one of my favorite pitchers of all time. He wound up getting one obviously in Arizona, but he was lights out during those years. I think he was averaging like 10 Ks a game, during that run that he did. And I think he beat the Yankees twice in a series. I mean, he was literally on fire. And probably one of my favorite pitchers of all time is Randy.
Yeah, they always seem to have some of the most electrifying players in baseball. And I think Kyle Lewis is going to follow suit. I think this guy is going to be a real special talent. And like I said, the thing that really impresses me at a young age, as a rookie, to lead the league in on-base percentage, because that's always the last thing I feel like when these top prospect hitters come up, is the patience, that's something you really need to learn over time. And the fact that he's doing that right from the get-go is really impressive to me. And that to me says a lot for his future, that when everything else develops, he's already got the eye for major league pitching. So I think the rest could just come very easily for him. I'm very excited for this guy's future, and I think he's a slam dunk right now. We didn't bring up some Rookie of the Year candidates, but to me, an absolute slam dunk for Rookie of the Year right now in the American League.
Me too. I can't dispute that.
We'll talk about the pitchers now, the Cy Young Award candidates, a few guys to mention for both leagues. Let's start in the National League. We've got Yu Darvish for the Chicago Cubs, that big contract a few years ago, of course. Kind of got the yips, really, in that World Series against the Astros, or at least it seemed that that's what happened to him.
Yeah.
Now, of course, that picture is a lot clearer. But the fact is, I think that definitely rattled his confidence on the mound. He was a guy who came out of Japan. I'm going through a lot of your guys' old videos recently, and that's a guy that was really hot. It seemed like when he first came out for collectors. And because it's so rare that a guy that young, that good, comes out of another professional league, another international league, and this guy's going to have a nice long career in Major League Baseball. That was in doubt a couple of years back really as soon as this year, where it looked like this Cubs contract was going to be a bust, and he looks like himself again. He had a great outing against the White Sox on Sunday. He's got a 1.7 ERA through 6 starts. He leads the National League in wins above replacement right now. Fangraphs win above replacement. Max Fried, a great young pitcher for Atlanta. They need those great young pitchers to step up right now, and he has looked spectacular on the mound for them, a 1.32 ERA through 6 starts. But for my money, and he has less starts under his belt this season, but Trevor Bauer is a guy who has always talked the talk. If you follow him on Twitter, you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. He is now walking the walk. I love that he, when he gets the strikeout, he does that little strut, you know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. Like he looks like a wrestler. Yeah. He's got that wrestling mentality, and I'm absolutely loving it. He has been so lights out. Listen to these numbers. He's 3-0. He's got a 0.68 ERA. He leads all of baseball. A 0.57 whip. He has struck out 41 batters and only walked 7. Batters in the major leagues are only hitting 0.93 against him so far. He's, to me, right now, if he keeps this up, no doubt about it, he may be a unanimous NL Cy Young Award winner.
Well, maybe the Bauer outage, which is his Twitter handle, is really kind of speaking to not having any fans in the stadium. Maybe he's thriving during this, but he's what? He's been on the Indians, and then I think he went to the Rockies.
Yeah,
and
he's been a prospect who has bounced around a long time, and he's not old. He's what? I think he's still under 30.
Yeah.
This is his contract year, so I'm sure that does play a part in the performance right now. But a guy who really, the strikeout stuff was there, never quite fulfilled his potential. But I think for collectors, if you're thinking, is he a little too old? I would say maybe, best case scenario, his career follows the path of Max Scherzer.
Right.
Where Scherzer was really a late bloomer, didn't really turn it on as a dominant starter till he was like 27, 28. Bauer has kind of found himself in the last year and a half or so. So maybe you hope, if you want to invest in him, you think maybe this is a guy that can keep this going. There's not as much wear and tear on the arm in his late 20s as there might be for some other top young pitchers who have already blossomed. So that's the case for him. It's still tough. Pitching is always weird, and it can't be predicted. But I think if you're going to build a case for him, maybe he blossoms into a Max Scherzer.
And you know what? And you're right. It could be pitching is such a mental thing. I mean, let's face it. Baseball is a mental thing. I mean, I played it for 14 years, and you can get in a funk. And I know he was battling through injuries. One thing I did want to do is I wanted to rewind to the Darvish thing. And when you were talking about that, and especially with the Astros thing, I actually remember him. I think he might have even tweeted out before or right around the outing of the Astros. And he was saying, and he obviously types and most of the time in his home language, but he was saying that he felt that they were knowing his pitches. Like it didn't feel right to him. Like he would throw something and it'd be like, how did this guy know? So he was one of the advocates, and he kind of stepped back once, Mike Fiers went in there and really kind of busted everybody out, and then the investigation started. But I remember Darvish And I think it might have been an interaction between Darvish and Bregman or somebody on the Astros, trying to remember, but they were going at it on social media, and I think Bregman or one of the guys in the Astros was just saying, well, you show your pitches.
Oh, yeah. I recall also an interaction he had with Christian Yelich.
That's what it was, yes.
About a year after the fact.
Yep.
And he was like, no, you're tipping your pitches, dude. I should know. He had some really quick comeback, and everyone's like, he wins Twitter. Take the L. You're done for the day.
Yeah, I think he started talking about the Astros, and then Yelich kind of jumped in to just say, hey, I've had success against you too.
Right.
And it's not. Don't blame it. Right. Exactly.
He could have been tipping his pitches, but also he's like, well, even if I'm tipping them, they're really raking me hard. Like, this is a little excessive right now. You see, maybe the tip pitch, Yu Darvish is a guy who has a mid-4s ERA, whereas tip pitch plus cheating against Yu Darvish gives you like a 9 ERA. So
and you also got to figure in the different cultures too. Like he played in another country where these baseball written rules and all this stuff, and the way people act around baseball were completely different. I believe it's him. There's a funny viral video. It's either him or it might be Nomo. I think it may be Nomo, but kind of the same philosophy, where he missed the start and they went to his locker room and they said, "What's up? Why'd you miss your start?" And he's all, "I had diarrhea," and everybody laughed. And he looked around the room and he was like, is that funny? It just kind of speaks to the culture that these guys come from, where their way of baseball, yes, the rules are probably similar and hitting the ball, pitching the ball is all the same, but the way players treat each other are completely different. And the things that are funny in America may not be as funny. Like he was like, you got to see, it might be Nomo. This is on the fly here.
I do remember that. I do recall that.
It was a funny moment on ESPN, and they said, why did you miss your start? He said he had diarrhea, and he said it with a straight face. And then everybody around him laughed, and he's just like, I don't understand why that's funny.
Right.
So just goes to speak when you grow up in a different way of how we do things around here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing that a culture clash in baseball is absolutely happening right now. But before we get into that, let's talk about some of those American League candidates for Cy Young. And very much like the National League MVP, this also feels kind of like a slam dunk right now. But let's give the other guys credit. Lance Lynn, a guy that I admire, because basically if I was playing baseball, I'd probably look like Lance Lynn.
Me too.
Big husky dude with a nice long beard. He's got a great quarantine beard. He's pitching really well. He's found his stroke in Texas. A guy who was another, very much like Trevor Bauer, a top prospect with the St. Louis Cardinals, and had some up and down years, some good years, some bad years, but over the last couple of years with Texas has really blossomed. He's got a 1.37 ERA and his 148 batting average against, second in the American League. Wow. Kenta Maeda nearly had a no-hitter for the Minnesota Twins, and his success is really surprising because he was traded. The Dodgers traded him to the Minnesota Twins, and was kind of expected to be – well, the Dodgers used him as a relief pitcher over the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. They weren't using him as a starter, although he originally was a starter. And now the Twins have decided we're going to use him as a starter, and it has totally paid off. He's 3-0 through 5 starts with a 2.27 ERA, 33 strikeouts compared to 6 walks. He leads the league in batting average against at 128. Been a great, great find for them. Mm-hmm. But I think it's just a no-doubter here. Shane Bieber has been the most electrifying pitcher in Major League Baseball this year. I mean, strikeout numbers are just off the charts. Yeah. 65 strikeouts. That leads Major League Baseball against just 6 walks right now. He's got a 1.11 ERA. That leads the American League. If you think maybe I like to look at the fielding independent pitching. That really gives you a feel for everything the pitcher's doing. He's got a 1.74 FIP. He's got a 0.76 whip. He's been phenomenal. He's been sensational. He's been everything Cleveland has wanted and more, and they really needed it with everything going on with Mike Clevenger and Dan Plesac, the son of Dan, I believe, and what's going on with them, and how I think I just heard today they are not going to be part of the rotation for the next week, and I don't expect that they're going to be in that rotation for the rest of the year, the way that they have really divided themselves from that clubhouse, or the clubhouse has sort of divided themselves from them. Bieber has been huge. He may not just be a Cy Young candidate. There's a very strong case that he may be an MVP candidate, especially considering what's going on with the rotation.
Yeah, I mean, those guys were at the club listening to Justin Bieber while Shane Bieber was out there just dominating.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about how harmless those guys probably viewed themselves going out. But, there's real repercussions, as you can see with some of the teams that have either people have given up on them, like Cespedes leaving the Mets, and, the Mets maybe not playing, the Cardinals not playing, so you can't take these situations lightly. And, one thing about Shane Bieber, too, is that if he does continue this pace all season, I do really feel bad for him, as I hopefully he can continue it for a couple more years to prove that he can do it in a full season. And that's like a lot of these possible records and these stats that are happening this year are they going to be forgotten in the next couple of years? Is it going to be like an asterisk year? And so that'll be something to monitor. Like, remember how well Shane Bieber did in 2020? Oh, well, it was only a 60-game season.
Yeah, exactly. He did, what was he? I believe he was American League leader in strikeouts a year ago. So, and he's still young. This is his age 25 season, so there is still a lot to build off of. So hopefully he keeps it up into next year. He's looked sensational. And you know what? A Cy Young for him, a Cy Young is a Cy Young. He'll be more than happy to get it. But you're absolutely right. Hopefully it doesn't stunt the growth. Hopefully this is not something that gets lost and forgotten as years go on. Well, we're going to move on to a thing that's happened last week that we have got to get to. And it really revolves around a bigger story, not just with this team. And the team we'll be talking about is the San Diego Padres, who, for my money, they may be the most exciting team in all of Major League Baseball right now. Just phenomenal play right now. I think they are now winners of 6 or is it 7 straight games, I believe. They have the longest win streak in baseball. I think the other teams with the long win streaks, the Toronto Blue Jays, another really young, really exciting team, and the San Francisco Giants, which who'd have thunk it?
You're right.
But the Padres have been one of the biggest stories in baseball over the last week, and it has to do with what happened against the Texas Rangers last week. The first game of that 4-game home-and-home series. Fernando Tatis Jr., as we've already said, the most exciting player maybe in all of baseball right now, comes up with the bases loaded. They're up 7-0. The count is 3 balls and no strikes. Apparently, manager Jace Tingler said, take. He puts the take sign on. Either Tatis didn't see it, Tatis ignored it, whatever it was, he
pitch
swung.
Was too juicy.
It was just too juicy. It's just had to eat that thing up and just launch it for a grand slam. And if you're watching us, you can see the picture. Eric Hosmer, you could actually see him going, oh, no. I got to tell you, don't do that, man. Like, it's okay. Like, we're up big now, but you can't do that. And I think there was even another angle. There was a video of Manny Machado on the on-deck circle, and he, like, puts his hands to his head. Not in a happy way, but just like, oh, man, why'd you do that? Now I'm going to wear it. I'm going to get a pitch, in the buttocks or something. And it's definitely opened up an interesting dialogue about the unwritten rules of baseball, which there are 2 perspectives here. One I've been hearing is, you know why the unwritten rules of baseball are unwritten? Because when you write them down, they sound stupid. They're ridiculous.
Yes.
The other side of it is, well, the unwritten rules of baseball kind of are why I like baseball. They're one of the quirks of baseball. It's what makes this game stand out from the other sports. I see a little bit of both. I lean more towards the who cares? The guy can play. Don't throw a meatball on 3-0.
Right.
But there is still a kind of a part of me that sees both. But I am gonna side, I think, with Tatis in that a couple days later, I think we saw the Toronto Blue Jays were down 7-0 and staged a comeback to win that game. So if you want to say the game was over anyway, but isn't the whole point of baseball is that no game is ever over? Like, it could be the 9th inning and nobody out and you're down 10-0, but you still got a shot, right?
Well, I mean, and I know it's a team sport, but you add 4 RBIs and another home run to your statistics, and you become a free agent. And maybe this year somehow he probably won't. But let's just say he gets to 100 RBIs, but he gets it because he was 3 away and he did that on that game. That's a big thing when you're in discussing of contracts. You'd be like, well, 5 straight years he had 100 RBIs. So those are you take away the unwritten rule, these guys still have to earn. Tatis doesn't know if he's going to be good for 20 years, for 10, 15 years or whatnot.
Get your money.
So you got to get your money. I mean, you got to go out there and play your best. I don't think you could turn it off. I mean, I played video games with some of my friends, and I would if they were beating me, I didn't want them to throw an interception, if they're playing basketball to take out LeBron, or I want them to continue to play. And I think that's like the whole point of the game is to continue to play. And look at the Giants. They lost 7-2 in the ninth. They lost that game to the A's not too long ago. So you never know what could happen in baseball. And to just kind of be like, well, I'm just going to try to strike out or take a walk because we're up so much. It's like, come on.
Yeah, to me, it's the one thing I've always subscribed to as a fan is don't play not to lose.
Right.
Play to win. Playing it safe is just going to, a lot of times it comes and bites back at you. To put on my sports fan hat right now, that's always something that as a 49er fan, when Jim Harbaugh was the coach, as much success as there was, one of the most frustrating things was he would always play not to lose, go for the field goal or go for something or say, oh, we're fine right now, or, punt it when maybe they could have gone for it. He did that a lot when and it really became very frustrating. Whereas if you play to win, you take some more risks. Sure, it's going to be riskier, or in this case, if he could swing at that and he didn't need to swing at it, maybe they would win 7-2 anyway. But the next day, I think the Padres hit a grand slam and were up 6-0 in that game. The final score was 6-4. That became a close game. So You just got to keep playing. I feel like this is such a simple concept to a lot of people. Like, yeah, no doubt, you got to keep playing to win. And yet here we are in baseball arguing over that very idea. And it's look, baseball.
I think it would be more blatantly obvious if you see it when a team's up 11-2 or 12-2, or you see the guys come in. You see Tatis go to the bench, and whoever his replacement's coming in to play the rest of the game. Now, it wasn't that kind of situation yet. So it's like, why would if it's an unwritten rule, then why doesn't the manager get flack for? You should have pulled Tatis then, right?
Yeah.
So Tatis is just told to play the game, and he's going to play the game the way he plays the game.
Yeah, and I think just really it was interesting to hear some of the comments. Obviously, the Padres manager, Jace Tingler, said we're going to talk to him. I think even Eric Hosmer said we're going to talk to him, but at the same time, like, it's a game. Like, we're going to, you see a pitch like that, and sometimes you can't help yourself. Like, you want to win. And I think
I'm sure Manfred was fine with it.
Exactly. We were all talking about baseball in the middle of NBA playoffs starting, Stanley Cup playoffs starting, football is right around the corner, and ESPN was talking about the unwritten rules of baseball. They were talking about Fernando Tatis Jr. So you could talk all about how, he's bad for the game, that's bad to do that. We were talking about baseball when baseball needs to be talked about in the midst of so much other stuff going on in sports, and people were focused on the San Diego Padres, what was happening. And then to make matters even crazier, you could see the graphic on the screen if you're watching us, that they went 4 straight games with a grand slam, which is a major league record. I think that 3 straight games tied the record, which was set by the Cleveland Spiders in 1895. Jeez. I mean, when you have to go back to the 19th century.
Is that when Mashed Potato Johnson was pitching?
Exactly. Mashed Potato Johnson. He was pitching with Six-Toed Jeremiah or something. You've done something special when you're going back that far. And I think the Padres saw that. They took it as fuel, the reaction by the Rangers across Major League Baseball. And I think, frankly, a lot of fans who I saw very few opinions that were like, Tatis is absolutely in the wrong here. Almost every opinion, the much outspoken Trevor Bauer that we've mentioned was totally in support of him, saying you got to pitch to win. Don't throw a meatball on 3-0. Maybe we need to change the way we deal with 3-0 pitches instead of giving them something right down the middle, expecting they're going to take. Maybe play with the corners a little bit more. Make it a little harder for these guys,
or walk the best player on the team.
Exactly.
When you have that kind of when you're behind. And one of the other things too about the unwritten rules is I go back to when Braden and A-Rod had the thing going on. Are we sure that everybody knows the unwritten rules? Are we we're just assuming these guys know that? I mean, if you rewind that, you had Dallas Braden pitching for the A's and you had A-Rod on the Yankees, and I believe it was a double play ball where A-Rod, I think, ran from first, and he had to go across the field to go to his own dugout, which he was probably thinking about the at-bat, or he was probably thinking about the next strategy or whatever. and he's just running head down to go to the dugout. He doesn't think about stepping on a mound. And then all of a sudden he gets berated by Braden, and you could see it was literally like, what? Like he didn't even know what he did, Yeah. So it's like, Braden, you don't step on a pitcher's mound, and he didn't know that. To me, his reaction was not like, I'm going to do this maliciously and step on your mound. It was like, I'm just thinking about baseball. I'm running to the dugout, and I guess I stepped on your mound. I wasn't thinking about it.
Yeah. So much of it is one, I think there's two factors. One is youth, that there's a lot of really young players right now, a lot of really good young players, more than I can remember in a long time, that are playing in Major League Baseball right now. And they play the game different. They watched guys play the game a little differently than sort of the old school style of play that, the two guys I always think of as sort of the gatekeepers of the way that baseball should be played. Brian McCann, who's now retired, and Madison Bumgarner are two of those guys who are like, you're not doing it the way I want you to do it.
Right.
And two, it can't be ignored, is the cultural difference. That players from Latin American countries, from Asian countries, they play the game differently. And you said the unwritten rules are unwritten, so some guys don't know those rules, or guys playing in Cuba or Korea have different unwritten rules.
Well, and Puig even spoke to that by saying when he was being scouted, and this was kind of the whole area he was in, was the scouts aren't going there to see you hit singles. You're swinging at everything. You're out there swinging at everything because you want to show how far you can hit that ball to these scouts that come over, and then hopefully they bring you back and make your dream come true. You're not out there bunting. You're not out there trying to get sacrifice hits and doing what baseball rules are. You're out there hitting home runs in Latin America. So, like you said, you spoke exactly to it, where it's a cultural difference. And that's how these guys make their dream come true. So when they get into the American League, they're going to try to do the same thing. That's just how they were brought up. So Bumgarner, I love him as a Giants fan, and he was great. But you know what? If a guy flips a bat a little bit when he hits a home run, he's just proud of his accomplishment. It's not him kicking you while you made a mistake. And I think that's what the unwritten rules supposed to be, is like, don't kick me because I made a mistake. Well, no, I'm happy that I made a great play, and that's why I'm flipping the bat. I'm happy for myself. I'm happy for my team.
Yeah, and if you want to say, well, all the batters get to have all the fun, well, look at what Trevor Bauer's doing right now in Cincinnati. Like, he walks off the mound, he struts, have fun with it. Like, and maybe some guys are going to get mad, but I think 10, 15 years down the road, it's going to be different. Guys are going to I would love to see it. I know there's old school baseball fans who maybe don't want to see that, but I think that in a way, too, it's kind of working. I saw some ratings numbers come out, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, so I apologize if I get a little wrong, but I saw that the demographics that have taken a huge spike is the audience under the age of 35 or 40, which is exactly the audience baseball has been trying so desperately to get and to become interested in the game. And I think if you have more guys like Tatis, and for him to do the crying emoji when the other Grand Slam got hit.
Right in the culture.
Exactly. Some people are going to see that as disrespect, but I think there's a younger culture that's going to put that on Twitter. They're going to retweet it. They're going to meme it. They're going to, whatever they're going to do with it, they're going to put it all over the internet, and they're going to be like, man, this guy's fun. Look at him just stunting on him. I love it. This is great.
And if you break it down into percentages, average pitchers win, the at bat 70% of the time. That's actually below average.
Yeah.
Great pitchers are winning 80 to 90% of the time. So as a hitter, the best hitters are going to win 30% of the time, bat 300. So you're not getting all that many opportunities to flip your bat, to win a game, to do a walk-off. You know what I mean? So you go through a lot of strikeouts and flyouts and groundouts and double plays before you can actually have some of those successful plays. And if that, especially if the guys maybe went 1 for 25 and he hits a walk-off, he's pretty excited. He broke out the slump. There's brighter days ahead. So
have fun. It's a game. I think I've got the quote up from Fernando Tatis. The game is hard for everyone. Why not just celebrate and have fun?
Absolutely.
That's what it comes down to. It's a game. Let's have fun. There's kids watching. You're not being, you're not being crazy disrespectful.
No.
I would rather have that than big brawls. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I would much rather have that. And, some people might say that doing that leads to big brawls, but I don't know. Let's grow some thicker skin. Let's have fun. It's just a game at the end of the day. And really, if there's any year that should really be magnified, it's this year. This is a game where people are having a hard time and people want to have an escape and enjoy things. And Fernando Tatis and the Padres are bringing a lot of people a lot of joy right now. So
Absolutely.
let's enjoy it.
Let's enjoy it.
And I think Fernando Tatis is also bringing a lot of joy to people who own his card right now, as they see that number just climb and climb and climb. I don't have the exact number, but I did see, I think over the weekend there was another record-setting auction of one of his cards, if I'm not mistaken. I think one of his cards sold for a crazy amount over the weekend.
Yep.
So just continuing to be one of the best investments really in the hobby right now.
And one of the things I did want to mention that I didn't mention during the Bowman Transcendent segment, once again, Bowman Transcendent does come out this week. Topps has not previewed what they're going to have in there, but every case is going to have a Bowman buyback. So you open that up. There could be a Trout 2009 Bowman in there. There could be a Tatis. Actually, the Tatis is probably a better possibility than the Trout. So that could be another crazy chase, and I'm going to be anxious to see who they put on that checklist if they do. So along with all the regular Transcendent cases, they're putting first Bowman buybacks in the Transcendent case as well. So there may be one of these crazy Tatis. There may be one of these Vlads or some of these up-and-coming stars that are doing really well in baseball, and you do have a shot at getting one of their first Bowmans in the Bowman Transcendent.
Yeah, it is Fernando Tatis Jr.'s world, and it feels like we're all just living
I know.
in it right
I feel like he's so quickly become the face of baseball,
crazy.
And I know he's not Trout, maybe not Harper yet, but, that is the guy that's leading off when they talk about baseball on SportsCenter and all these other outlets. It's Tatis. And I feel like San Diego hasn't had that kind of guy since maybe Tony Gwynn.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Tony Gwynn would be that last sort of transcendent player. And I think a big part of it has to do with why are we not talking, Trout's been doing amazing things for the last 10 years now. But the fact is personality matters when it comes to marketing. And, I think I've been a big opponent, I've been very outspoken about the way MLB doesn't do a very good job of promoting their players. But also sometimes a guy just pops off the screen like Tatis, where he's got the swag, he's got the smile, he's got the personality, and on top of it all, he's got incredible talent where he markets himself. Like, it's just easy, and ESPN wants to latch onto that. So it's really exciting to see a guy.
And, we'll
like
see
that
how
right
many
now.
guys start having blonde dreads, right? I mean, because you've seen the pitchers. It seemed like it was overnight that every pitcher started having long hair after that. After the bets, the whole staff had long hair at one point, right? And, obviously Madison Bumgarner's had long hair.
Yeah, Tim Lincecum, of course.
Lincecum. And now it seems like every up-and-coming pitcher has long hair. So it'd be interesting to see these Latin guys and some of these guys that play like Tatis start doing the dreads, the blonde, the flash, because it's a copycat league, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, before we wrap things up, let's quickly go over just what are we looking forward to in the second half? Who are the teams that you expect to jump up? Who are the teams that maybe have surprised and maybe I think are going to come down a little bit? I'll start off with one team that I think this is a really pivotal moment for them. It's the Philadelphia Phillies. They just made one of the first big trades of the season. I believe they acquired Brandon Workman and Heath Hembree from the Red Sox to fortify their bullpen. And then they blew it. Those two, I believe Workman was part of them blowing another game from the bullpen. So it's kind of a mess right now with Philadelphia. Bryce Harper's having a great season, but they really need to step it up. There's way too much talent on that team to go another year with Harper there with more disappointment. I know it's a 60-game season, but to me, that would be a huge failure with 8 spots to take in the playoffs. If the Phillies can't take one of those, it's going to be a tough offseason in Philadelphia, and I think you're going to see some changes in the front office.
And you mentioned that. I think we got about 4 or 5 more days to the trade deadline. So this is a very, very interesting year for that fact. And I know we talked about this last week, but our team's going to be willing to give up some of these big name prospects in this kind of season. Our teams that are in the cellar willing to trade their number one guy for prospects down the line. Especially with the way the draft went, where there was less rounds. So that's what I'm going to be kind of focusing on, especially for the first Bowmans, because it's always a bummer when you have a guy that's on one team gets traded. Now his first Bowman card is on the other teams, and we see that with like Gleyber Torres and Fernando Tatis and pictured in the White Sox uni. So I'm kind of watching that and see if and now my team, the Giants, may make a move or two. Maybe they're buyers now because they're only a couple games out of the playoff or the wild card. So, not one team stands out for me. I obviously want to see more Tatis, but I'm following this trade deadline just to see in this wacky year what becomes of it.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the strangest trade deadlines ever. It's a strange season, but on top of it all, you mentioned a team like the Giants that, a week ago they were dead in the water. They were done. And now suddenly they are, I believe, with this new playoff format, they are right there in the wild card spot. I think like the 7th or 8th spot.
Yeah.
So who'd have thunk it? But they seemed like a perfect candidate to trade like a Johnny Cueto, who seemed like, oh man, what team? A team like the Yankees that has had pitching trouble, a team like the Washington Nationals, who just had to put Steven Strasburg on the DL at the end of the season, or the IL, excuse me, it would really benefit from a guy like Johnny Cueto there. But when the Giants are 2 games below 500 and in that wild card spot, do you want to trade him? Do you maybe wait till next year? I think he's got another year on his contract. Do you wait till next year when maybe you can get a bigger haul for him? It's a strange time. It's going to be one of the craziest trade deadlines, or could be one of the quietest trade deadlines ever, because I think a lot of teams are going to, like the Baltimore Orioles are in it right now. Who would have ever thought that would be the case? And you would think maybe 3 or 4 years down the road, but they are right in the thick of it right now, sitting at 500.
And they've got prospects. I believe Mountcastle might have just gotten called up, but Rushman's probably a few years away. Let's hope that as an Oil fan or somebody that's out there that's an Oil fan, Rushman isn't involved in any of these trade conversations, but you never know. If you can get some huge name in order to move Rushman, and maybe you compete. It's tough. It's at least going to be considered, but they're probably not going to move a first overall pick for somebody, but you never know. These guys have deep farm systems.
Yeah. So right off the top of your head, before we go, your quick World Series prediction as we are now entering the second half. Who do you got? Has it changed from the beginning of the season? It's a little bit different. What's your World Series pick as of today?
Oh, man. I think the Dodgers, as much as I hate to say this as a Giants fan, I still think the Dodgers are going to do it. The way Mookie's been playing, I feel like maybe Mookie was the missing piece to that already great lineup that, if some of the other guys are going to be cooling off, that you still have Mookie Betts to not only play awesome defense, but hit a couple home runs a game. And I think I'm still going for the Dodgers, and I think I'm starting to kind of feel the A's. I think we might have a 1990, 30-year anniversary. 88, 32 years. There was the Reds in 90.
Yep.
But a Dodgers-A's World Series might be kind of crazy, where you have a team that's filled with superstars on one side and big contracts, and then you have Billy Ball and, a bunch of guys that are just great teammates and have great chemistry to go against this juggernaut of a payroll team.
Yeah, I think the Dodgers, to me, are the slam dunk choice, no doubt. Just so much good talent. The fact that Mookie Betts is maybe better than the Dodgers could have even hoped for is wild. The fact that Cody Bellinger has not even quite hit his stride yet. Yeah. Hit a couple of bombs over the weekend, but the fact that he has not even hit his stride maybe right now is a very scary thought. And you've got guys like Dustin May looks really good. Clayton Kershaw looks as good as he's looked in years. So, yeah, the Dodgers right now are on an unbelievable run. The A's are probably the way I'm leaning to as well, just because they're a team that has so many playoff struggles, but this is a year where things are going to happen fast. You get into the playoffs and you don't really have time to think about it, maybe like in years past or whatever it may be. And there's no one-game wild card, which is great news for them. You're at least going to have 3 shots. I think maybe the Yankees as well, once they get healthy, look out. The one I'm hoping for, though, and I saw them play over the weekend, the Cubs and the White Sox in all-Chicago World Series is a very real possibility. I wouldn't be totally shocked to see a Cubs White Sox all-Chicago World Series. I know they're talking about bubbles, having the playoffs in bubbles. And, boy, if it's an all-Chicago World Series, no need for it. You've got your Chicago bubble right there. So you're all set. No need to move anywhere.
And, one of the funniest things I've seen all year, and I had to watch it about 5 times, was Luis Robert running from center field.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
And Eloy Jimenez just knowing he's going to get the ball, not even moving an inch, and just getting a front row seat of Luis Robert making that play. And then just looking at him, you can't tell if he's angry or excited or just like, not again, and just the face he made to Luis Robert, who then giggled and threw the ball back in. It was just an absolute, like, just hilarious moment, and I had to keep watching it. And that team is fun to watch.
Yeah,
so
that's big, like little brother, big brother energy right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally what that is. Luis Robert, just that big grin, like I did it again. Nothing you can do about it.
Yep.
It was really funny. They're a fun team to watch.
And it wasn't like Eloy didn't trust him, because he didn't like get behind him or anything.
Yeah.
Which, in hindsight, would have looked really bad if it would have bounced off his glove and Eloy was just standing there, but and not backing him up. Because I know as a baseball player, you always were taught to make sure you're in position if the ball bounces off the guy's glove.
Yeah.
But it was just a very funny and engaging moment there.
It would be a fun moment, and boy, I think baseball would be really excited if they got that kind of matchup in the World Series. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Mojobreak Dugout section. Remember to check us out on Mojobreak Media, Mojobreak Card Shop, and of course on our main feed on YouTube, Mojobreak, for all of the latest breaks, and over at mojobreak.com to get on that. For Doug, I'm Cody, and we will see you next time on the Mojobreak Dugout section.